Hi, it's McLaughlin Guy. As some of you may have seen, I recently beat a level called Hyperion after 17,000 attempts, 14,000 of which were in a practice copy, and about 3,000 of which were on the main level, like 500 or so being in practice mode and whatnot. So it took me a fair bit of time, and as far as I know, I'm the first person to ever beat it as a hardest, which is why I wanted to take some time to talk about the level and the experience I had with it. This is my second take of this because the first time I rambled a little bit too much, and I also forgot to submit the GDDL rating like I wanted to, my overall assessment of the level's difficulty and whatnot. So I'm once again going to create a copy of my copy and get into it. Couple things I want to talk about before I start playing the level. First off, something I noticed, out of all the 2,500-ish attempts I did from zero, there was only one time where I was on this little platform here. I jumped off and ended up with the secret way stopper, which is something I would not have known about if that hadn't happened. I would have been able to pass the entire level without that, just pretty easy there. I don't know if I would have walked away from it after that or not, but I thought that was an interesting find, and interesting it only happened once. The second thing is this little invisible saw right here. This part was actually really hard for me to learn, but ended up getting really consistent towards the end. And this saw was, you have to click as soon as you hit that portal up there and then buffer that orb to avoid getting killed by that. And I did find it a little bit annoying to deal with when I beat the level, but it wasn't too bad. But that was one of the more, well, that is one thing I do have to complain about. I also want to highlight, I think this whole structure and logo is really cool, and I like the way they did that. And then something else I wanted to look at, it's hard to tell here, but these white parts of this saw indicate you can pass through it, and then the black parts indicate that those are spikes that are going to kill you, which is hard to see, but it is slightly indicated. And then it's kind of the same deal later in the level when you have this very lovely decorated part with these little flame pillars. I was really mad about this at first, but then I realized, oh, I mean, those are kind of indicated that those kill you, because I thought I was going to have to perform a really hard click right at the end before I realized you really just need to double click in a specific way to get through. But that is something I noticed right as I was learning that part, and right before I ended up beating the level. But let's get into this. Let's go from zero. First, talk about the pre-draw. Not much to cover here. Just that one little blue orb timing there is honestly, it is somewhat of a difficult click. Also, I always found that to be a kind of intimidating spot to die, just right before you get into the second section of that. I always thought the way it just kind of like stares you down always kind of got me. I like the good luck though. This is honestly the best decorated part of the level. And you do have that one little bug that you just saw where I didn't get teleported when I hit the orb, and I just ended up hitting the platform there, which you can survive and keep playing the level, and I did a couple times. But that is interesting quirk. I love the structuring and background effect here, though. And I did it again. Yeah, I think, because that teleports you. I actually don't know how you get to have that teleport bug happen consistently, but it is interesting that it happens. Yeah. is a really interesting thing. Anyways, I'm gonna get past this part before I ramble too much. I like that effect right before there. And then you got a couple micro clicks right here. You just got a couple micro clicks to start off the duel, which aren't too bad. Then you have to double click really quick into that black orb, because otherwise, if you don't do that, you'll end up with the cube flying into the spikes there. If you try to like time it. Didn't happen that time, but it can happen. But demonstrate right here. Sorry, I'm trying to do it wrong. That's also something that could happen if you click too late, as you get sent up in there. Yeah, right there, the way I died there, if you're not careful. That was something that was really hard for me to figure out, is in fact you have to double click there. You have to double click there. Then you have to pay attention to the ball, and then you have to click as soon as you hit that green portal. Because if you wait too long, then you end up getting killed by that saw. Because you have to wait, and you have to buffer that orb. You have to buffer those orbs, so you don't die to that invisible saw. Then that part's just click sync. If you start clicking too early, you end up dying like that. It got consistent towards the end though. Then that's just quick and release. This part's interesting because you only have to click twice, but I prefer to click 3 times. I also think it's possible to click 4, but it's really difficult because if you try to release before you hit that yellow orb, you usually end up dying. I did it there, but it is quite hard to pull off. Then this wave took me a while to get consistent, but it's mostly just a skill based thing. And then you saw in my completion, if you look at it, there's a bug where both spiders can merge into one. It's really hard to replicate, so I won't try, but that was quite interesting. Then if you look, oh, I did it. See right there, 2 spiders merged into one. And then this part here, if you don't click, those black parts actually have hitboxes, and they are what kills you. But it is kind of hard to see that that's supposed to be the obstacle, or I thought it was, but it is indicated, so I will give it to them. Then this part looks kind of complicated, but it's not too bad. I mean, there are some ways that you can die that are a bit annoying here, but and it was a little inconsistent even towards the end, but honestly, it's not so bad. I like it. It's kind of satisfying to pull off. See, I think either they fixed that or it stopped happening, because I used to be able to slide under the portal. There used to be a D block down there, or there might still be in the editor. I'm actually gonna check that out later. But you could slide just for a sec and then you would instantly die. But I think there might have been some sort of update to the number or something. That's not happening. Then that part's just a couple orb timings. You can get teleported into that spike, but that usually doesn't happen. When it does, it's really annoying. This part is simple. It's just you hold, do 2 clicks, and hold again and do 2 clicks, and then you just gotta survive that wave. It's harder than it looks. I think that's the whole point, is having 2 waves that really makes it unsuspectingly tight. And this spider took so long to get consistent, but it actually was really consistent once I finally got it. And then you've got that little chip part, which was a couple timings. So the most notable thing here is that little double click I just died to. I could not do that at all when I first played that. It took me like a lot of attempts, like so many, to finally be able to make that click. And it was honestly one of the biggest roadblocks to me learning the level. But once I got it consistent, I was passing it basically every time right before I beat the level. So I actually don't mind it because I think it is quite fun. And I still have the muscle memory. Then this part, I would die into that transition a lot, and then occasionally I'd like go a little too high there and die like that. Or I'd go low and die like I did earlier. And then once, occasionally I'd just screw this up and then hit like that, or go too high. I like that trick too. This part is kind of messy decoration-wise. It's not too bad. I'd still say this is rate-worthy decoration, but I do think it gets a little cluttered. However, the click sync here, as long as you're looking at it, as long as you have to pay mind to the music. You click to the music, but also pay mind to what's going on screen. Because it's not like, it is really good click sync, but I'm not quite sure if it's perfect click sync, but it is really satisfying to pull off as long as you're paying attention to it. I'd usually die at like 57 to 60 there, and then if I didn't die there, I'd make it all the way through here, and then usually I would die at that little shift thing where I go a little too high, or the wave. That was usually what killed me there. And also, you can go under that spike and hold into there, so that is interesting. You have that little consistency there. I actually think this part's a huge step up, because it's like, suddenly everything just works. It's like the shading is a lot more subtle, and like it's not as in your face. So I feel like this one, like, keeps the same vibe as the previous part, but the way the colors work together, and the way they kind of flow, and they're a little more subtle, and they kind of shimmer, and you also have those little details like the squares at the top, and then like those little glow icicles almost sticking out there. It just makes this part has like so much of a better vibe, and it's my favorite click pattern in the whole level. This is just so satisfying. Then this part, sometimes I go there. I did it that time. I screwed myself over by not dying. But sometimes I'd go a little too low like that, or I'd go too high and I'd hit the ceiling, or I'd even hit that orb right there. But this part definitely a little tricky, and then this wave is just kind of tight in the end. This one, there is a little thing where if you click the slope too early, you die. It's not too bad, but it did cause one or two issues in practice. Never died to this cube or robot from zero. This is a really fun robot part, honestly, and I honestly wish something like this was earlier in the level, just because it like really creatively uses like clicking and holding mechanics, because you have to click as soon as you have to release and then hold when you hit the blue orb to hit the yellow orb. But once you get enough height to get to the yellow jump ring, you can't just immediately click. You have to wait to clear the spike there, and then get enough height to get up to the next platform without overshooting either. And then you have to do similar timings in between the spikes and everything to finally get through to the end and hit the dash orb into the ship. And it seems complicated for the end of the level, but it actually gets really consistent because you build the muscle memory with it, and then it ends up like being really satisfying to pull off. So I just hit the orb and go through there. Yep, just like that. And I place another start position because I'm gonna die. This ship is just really skill-based and kind of scary, and you can die, like I just did there to show you, and then you get the Rage Bait Cat if you die there. Because I agree with it, like, bro, really, but, like, I would have been so mad if my last run had ended up me seeing that cat. I probably would have cursed out. I would have cursed out my computer screen. But I'm lucky, I died right there. That was my worst death. And it was bad, but I'm lucky I only died there once. But I think Ninja Cat did a solid job on this part, and I like how it kind of chills out, kind of like Overload did at the end too. And then you have that cool little end screen, and then you can click here and you can see the icon moving because you still have that effect applied. But yeah, that's pretty much everything I wanted to cover with the gameplay. I'm gonna check the little notes I made to make sure I didn't miss anything. Oh yeah, the one thing that I forgot to mention is that little dual spider reminds me a little of Mechanical Showdown. And I also spent some time talking about the decoration like I wanted to. But with the I shouted out the 3 parts I wanted to shout out, which is the THM logo is really cool, the effect leading up to the first drop is really cool, and as well as the structuring there, and it's just got really good colors. And then that part right around 70-ish, right before the ship transition into the final wave, is really cool. So now what I want to do, which I forgot to do earlier, is I want to submit a rating for this on GDDL with everything I said in mind. So deciding the difficulty I wanted for this is kind of hard, but I think I am honestly going to stick with 17, because even though I'm actually going to change my attempts to be the total amount, including my practice attempts here. Even though I took 17,430 attempts on this, I do think it's not quite tier 18 for the reason that it just gets really consistent, and there's not like, none of the things are like super tight or oppressive to the point where I really think that puts it like dead in the middle of Insane Demons. Because it was a lot harder than Overload, but also I only died like twice towards the ending, so it wasn't like it just took a long time to learn. I think that is really the core of what I'm trying to say here, is even though it took me so many attempts, I don't think it's like that much more incredibly harder than Overload. I just think it was unintuitive to me because I haven't done a lot of duel levels, and it just had a lot of skill sets that I haven't really developed and I'm not really used to, whereas Overload was a lot more straightforward, which is why I took only like 6,500, a bit under 6,500 attempts total for that. So 10,000 less attempts than this took me. Almost 11,000. But that's why I think overall it's a little bit shy of that mid-tier. And I'm going to concur with the general opinion of this as tier 17. Because I feel like I overrated Overload. I feel like Overload is more of a tier 15. So this is definitely a couple steps above that. And I did quite enjoy this level. I'm going to give it an 8 just because it was so learny for me. And also because there were those 1 or 2 little things that kind of took a while to get consistent and did annoy me a bit. And you only need proof for tier 25 or higher, so I'm not going to submit that. But I do think this is enjoyment 8 for me. But it is an incredible level, and it was really well play tested. So yeah. I'll be able to see that on the page now. But overall, I do think they did a really good job with this level. The decoration is solid with a couple parts that stand out quite a bit, and only one part I feel is a little lacking. And the gameplay overall is really good, really consistent. Do feel like the second half overall is a little bit more consistent and easier than the first half, but it wasn't to the point where it started to get downright oppressive, so I honestly don't mind. Like, good job to everyone who playtested this. Good job to Flaminic for a really good layout that made this level into what it is. And honestly, just good game overall. and I'm happy to move on to other things now.